think the impact really is a psychological one. I think, as we know, the war is kind of in a sort of stalemate at the moment. The Ukrainians made sort of quite big gains in the second half of last year, but the Russians still have a large area of Ukrainian territory. And, I think this is a way of warning the Ukrainians that neither the status quo is an option nor further Ukrainian gains are an option in Russia's view, that they can carry on doing this sort of thing, whatever Ukrainian forces do on the ground.
We've managed to connect with the Times correspondent Richard Spencer, who is in the Donbass region of Ukraine. As you're well aware, so many Russian missiles targeting infrastructure. It's been tricky to get through to Richard, so I want to make sure that we can speak to him now, because there were those fresh wave of attacks yesterday across Ukraine. At least 12 people killed in a strike on an apartment block in the eastern city of Dnipro. Kyiv, Kharkiv and Odessa also attacked. Morning to you, Richard.
Good morning.
What do we know about these latest missile strikes in Dnipro? Just bring us right up to date.
Well, the missile in Dnipro was just one of at least 15, perhaps more than 20 missiles that were fired at cities across Ukraine yesterday. The biggest round of missile strikes on ordinary cities in Ukraine for a couple of weeks now. One really scored a direct hit on an apartment building. And that's led to very grim scenes there in this city, Dnipro, which is in sort of central eastern Ukraine. It's kind of the gateway city to all the big front lines in the southeast of the country, and it's quite a significant industrial city in its own right. This apartment block, terrible scenes, videos, very, very heart-wrenching videos where you can see people trapped in the rubble. You can hear the screams of people calling for help. We know that 14 bodies have been found so far, and they're expecting more to be found later.
I mean, it's desperately sad that these civilian targets are being hit. I'm just wondering that the wider impact as well, beyond the loss of life. I mean, the impact on the power infrastructure, most of the country now on an emergency blackout because of these continued attacks by Russia on the infrastructure of the country.
Yeah, so the Ukrainians have become quite good at getting power back even after these attacks. I mean, they started in when I was in Ukraine in September, when they actually took out sort of half the country's electricity in one night. Quite dramatic. They have got things back and running again, and they're quite good at sort of winding things up. All the cities, lots of people are conserving energy quite significantly. You can see here that my electricity is working this morning. But power has been turned down heating's been turned down in all the public buildings, hotels. People are themselves conserving energy. I think the impact really is a psychological one. I think, as we know, the war is kind of in a sort of stalemate at the moment. The Ukrainians made sort of quite big gains in the second half of last year, but the Russians still have a large area of Ukrainian territory. And, I think this is a way of warning the Ukrainians that neither the status quo is an option nor further Ukrainian gains are an option in Russia's view, that they can carry on doing this sort of thing, whatever Ukrainian forces do on the ground.
We spoke to you yesterday about these British tanks being sent over to Ukraine to help. It was something that was very much resisted by the British government in the early days of the war. I mean, just give us a sense of the significance they will make to the war effort, and also the message that it sends to Russia.
Yeah, I don't think these latest strikes are going to do anything to deter Western governments from sending more arms, are they? I think, as with all these things, they will provide significant but marginal effect, if that's not too paradoxical. They're not going to end the war. You're not going to see 14 Challenger tanks sort of leading a charge to the Russian border. It does give the Ukrainians, who've proved to be quite good at using their material wisely, perhaps with the help of the Western advice and training that they've been getting. This is another option they can use in specific circumstances and specific battles to get the upper hand. So I think the aim is that in these spring offensives that people expect to happen when the weather warms up a bit, they will be used to make sort of tactical thrusts in particular areas. We saw last September this very sort of subtle tactical positioning of Ukrainian forces, which led to the collapse of Russian troops in Kharkiv province. Same happened in Kherson in December, and I think they'll be using these tanks to supplement the very high-end artillery they have in a similar way to make sort of short, sharp tactical thrusts in particular areas where they've identified Russian weaknesses.
And Richard, before we let you go, tell us a little bit about where you are and how you're able to operate at the moment, go out and gather information and file reports.
Yeah, so I'm in the Far East, where there's been this major battle. I mean, the bloodiest battle of the war so far in the last few weeks in the towns of Bakhmut and Solidar. Again, as with so often, towns that people in Britain probably would have never have heard of before, but have suddenly become the center of this conflict. Bakhmut is in Donetsk, which is one of these two provinces known as with Luhansk known as the Donbass. Russia claims the Donbass as part of Russia. It's already officially annexed them according to Russian law, but half of Donetsk is still out of their control. A lot of these provinces were taken in 2014. They now have all of Luhansk, thanks to their activities last year. They're still missing half of Donetsk, including Kramatorsk, the city where I am, another big city called Slovyansk. And Bakhmut is a kind of transport node between the Russian lines and where we are here. So they're trying to break through in Bakhmut and this satellite town of Bakhmut called Solidar to try and get to those transport nodes so they can roll up the motorways to where we are here. So I was in Bakhmut yesterday, where there was heavy fighting yesterday, lots of shelling, mortaring, small arms fire. The Russians haven't managed to break into the town there. They have seemingly got hold of most of Solidar after these extraordinary battle last week, where the Russians were sending in their troops, who were mainly convicts released on condition of joining this mercenary group called the Wagner Group, and they were leading the charge on this town Solidar in sort of human wave attacks. They've been told that if they retreated, they'd be shot or returned to prison. So they were just sort of charging over in large numbers. And according to one estimate, they had at least 4,000 men killed in the last week and couple of weeks maybe in that battle. They do seem to have got most of that small town, but they haven't been able to sort of consolidate and move on Bakhmut itself. So I was there yesterday. There's still a few civilians in this town, and a lot of soldiers obviously recovering from the battles of the previous few days.
Richard, good to speak to you. Stay safe.
Thank you.
That is Richard Spencer, the Times correspondent. He's in the Donbass region of Ukraine. And it's interesting, I was reading that actually the attacks yesterday on the various cities across Ukraine were the first in a couple of weeks by Russia to target Ukrainian infrastructure. And it was getting to the point where officials in the western Ukraine were starting to wonder if Russia's, what people call an energy war, if the targeting of Ukraine's infrastructure was coming to an end, because there was a sense that it wasn't breaking Ukrainian spirit, it's clear. So was it effective? But obviously yesterday there was a change of tact.